Create the problem. I'll be happy.
Battering this thing. No wonder why people are going out of business. People are doing fine.
That was our vacation.
Where's the official clock? We have an official clock, but I have 6:02. Is that around? She's always the time. Well,
Sorry.
I don't know. The spring's probably.
My watch is off.
We are, yeah.
And that is?
I'm so glad. I'm just glad somebody said something.
Nothing. We have employees in London.
Can somebody blink the lights?
We're
Like they do in the theater? Well, then we're convened. Blink the lights and then we'll wrap the gavel.
I can try.
Move to chair.
First day off.
Looks like we have an extra chair. Hello.
Brings it out. Takes an hour. Oh man.
Too many chairs.
Y'all ready?
I slipped.
We have too many chairs.
Pain, man.
Maybe don't. No, we don't.
Yeah, there's just one on the end.
I tell you what.
Everybody in the orchestra ready? I'd like to call to order. I'd like to turn on my microphone first. Call to order the Town Council meeting for Tuesday, January the 9th, 2018, Town of Mount Pleasant. We are at the appointed place at the appointed time, and it's good to see everyone not in a parka for the first time in a week. And just in a way of announcement, nobody knows this yet, but we got invited after our weather spell to be sister cities with Fairbanks, Alaska. So I think that might be right up our alley. We'll see about that. We're going to start off with the prayer by Chaplain Michael Wright, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mayor Pro Tem Gary Santos. Please stand.
Let us pray. God bless this place and give us grace so that we might care. God bless this town and all around with thankful hearts so we may serve. God bless all who lead, and may they heed your call to give and share. God bless our work and play and all we say so that we might find joy. God bless these days of rough and narrow ways, lest we despair. God bless the night and calm the people's fright, that we might love. God bless this land and guide us with your hand, lest we be unjust. God bless this earth through pangs of death and birth, and make us whole. God bless all here, empty all fear, so that we might know your peace. Amen.
Amen.
Please face the flag.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Item number 3, compliance with Freedom of Information Act. Mr. Pagliarini, are we in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, Mayor, we're in compliance.
Thank you very much. We will move on to item 4, which is approval of the agenda as published. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. The ayes have it. The agenda is approved as published. Public hearings, awards, and presentations. Mr. DeMora.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have Dr. Anna Eskridge here from Charleston County Community Development to lead us with the public hearing tonight. Doctor?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. So Charleston County each year receives housing and urban development funding from the federal government. Those funds are to be used across Charleston County, everywhere outside of the city of Charleston city limits. And so we go around to our different participating jurisdictions, everywhere from McClellanville to Hollywood to Mount Pleasant, to talk about that funding and make sure that everyone is aware of the funding availability. We receive 3 types of funding from the from HUD. The Community Development Block Grant funding, that funds everything from Meals on Wheels to emergency housing repairs. Emergency Solutions Grant funding, which funds homeless-related activities like rapid rehousing and shelter operations. And then Home Investment Partnership Program funding, which funds new construction and rehabilitation projects. The funding is intended for low to moderate income citizens. And I've left a few items with the Clerk of Council for you all. One of the things that we like to discuss when we come are the accomplishments that we've had over the past year. So you'll see this handout when you get this information. We have to thank our community partners and towns like the town of Mount Pleasant for helping us make sure that these things get accomplished. In the town of Mount Pleasant, funding was given to East Cooper Meals on Wheels and East Cooper Community Outreach, and so those outcomes are captured on this form. For this past year, both those organizations have also received funding as well as Mount Pleasant Waterworks. So we hope to continue to, well and septic, water and sewer connections, affordable housing to include new construction and rehabilitation of existing units, and emergency home repairs. We have our application out for this next year's funding. It's due January 26th at 3 p.m. The entire application is online, and for those folks in the audience, if you go to our website, charlestoncounty.org, and look for our Department Community Development, you can't miss the request for applications. We have several places that point you to that RFA. We would love for qualified nonprofits to apply for that funding. I've left a couple of other helpful resources for the Clerk of Council. We have a resource directory of different nonprofits and groups that do everything from food pantries to rental assistance. You all are welcome to hand those out to the public as needed or refer them to the different organizations on there. And also Charleston County, our department keeps a small amount of that funding in-house, and we run a well and septic connection program for LMI residents. So if you have a resident that needs a well upgrade or a septic upgrade or a connection to existing infrastructure, please feel free to give them one of those applications and it comes straight to us. So at this point, if you all have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Is that it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Well, yes, sir.
Item B, sorry.
Mayor, members of council, we are proud to announce an upgrade in our ISO rating. Chief Mixon, will you come forward and do that for us?
Good evening, everyone. In September of last year, the Insurance Services Office, ISO, came into our town and did an evaluation, an on-site assessment of our rating, our public protection classification. Previously, the previous report from 2014, we were rated a 3, and it was actually a low 3. It was a 71. After this report that we received a few weeks ago, we moved up to a 2, which is a huge improvement. And not only did we move up just to a 2, but we're a high 2 of an 87. So we're very hopeful that going forward, we can push toward that Class 1 to be a Class 1 accredited agency, which there's very few in the nation. And another good point to this, it also helps reduce insurance costs for our citizens. So the more we can push forward an improvement in this area, the lower those insurance costs are. So we want to announce that tonight, and we're very proud of that too. So thank you.
Well, we want to thank you on behalf of council and on behalf of the citizens of Mount Pleasant for doing that.
Yes, sir.
I have a chairman of the fire committee, and I also have the former chairman of the fire committee who was chairman when this review took place. So I'm going to be a real politician and go with you first. Would you like to say a word?
Yeah, Mike, the town is very grateful for the work that the fire department's done, certainly over the decades and over many years, but last year proved very resourceful. I'm sorry.
Is your mic on?
Maybe not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
But Mike, again, the town is very grateful for the work that the fire department's done. And there's no reflection on the committee. It's all you.
Thank you, sir. And it's not me. It's the men and women of our department, but I appreciate that.
We're very grateful, and you've made us all look a lot better, and you've served very well. We've got the citizens who are going to benefit from this rating, and we can't thank you enough.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mr. Brimmer, do you have a word?
Not much to add other than just to say I know the fire committee and council as a whole will do whatever we can to support you to get to that, get us to level 1 this coming
Yes, sir.
year. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I think a round of applause is in order.
Thank you.
Council, will you please join me up front? Next item on the agenda is the Civic Pride Award and the announcement of that. And you know, Nicole Harvey, would you come up, please? And Kenda Sweet, who is the chairman of our CAP. And so if you'll lead us in that, Nicole.
Thank you, Mr. DeMora. On an annual basis, the Culture, Arts, and Pride Commission identifies businesses and organizations in Mount Pleasant that go above and beyond in their beautification efforts. The CAP Commission chose Vintage Coffee Cafe and Coastal Crust to receive the 2017 Civic Pride Award for their outstanding efforts to landscape and beautify their open space, which has become an inviting outdoor area for family and friends to gather and enjoy Mount Pleasant. Here to present the award is the chair, as Mr. DeMora said, Kenda Sweet.
And I would like to call forward Brian Peisner here. Brian?
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Brian. Great. This is our Civic Pride Award, and we want to thank you. We really appreciate your commitment to our community in your beautification efforts that contribute to the significant sense of pride that we all feel here in the town of Mount Pleasant. So let's do a photo op if you can turn it around.
Thank you. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good evening again. It's my pleasure tonight to recognize Chief Mark Karst for 25 years of service. Over the last 25 years, Chief Karst has been an example of dedication to our department. He's moved up from the ranks from firefighter, engineer, lieutenant, captain, and now the rank of battalion chief that he's held for the past over 7 years. Chief Karst is always that cool presence on a fire scene or an accident. Never has to raise his voice. People just know by his calmness that he's in control of the scene, and he he is able to handle any situation. It's the same in the stations. He's always been a mentor to many. People go to him for advice in private and quietly, and he's always, again, that very quiet presence that when he speaks, it's not often, but when he does, people listen. This is special for me tonight because Chief Carson was my boss for many years, and I consider him one of my mentors here in the fire department. Many mornings, just he and I would share a cup of coffee, and he'd give me advice on the job, on family, children, all types of things. He's a wonderful individual. He's did over 33 years in the Air Force, 13 years active, 20 years reserves. He's now retired from that. And he's a wonderful asset to this department, this town. His dedication day in and day out on shift is inspirational, and he is definitely one of the leaders in his rank in our department. I'm proud of him for 25 years. I hope we get another 10 out of him, 15, because he really is an asset. But again, thank you for having us tonight, and thank you for allowing us to recognize Chief Mark Karst.
Mayor, Council, ladies and gentlemen, Chief, I present to you FTO Lachey Jones, and she's being recognized tonight, and she's your Employee of the Month. And on December 12th, 2017 of last year, Lachey was doing her regular patrol along Bank Street in that area of town, as a matter of fact, early in the morning, around 4 a.m., cold night. And she discovered an individual lying on the sidewalk and approached the individual. The person was incapacitated, couldn't get up. Come to find out, it was an 85-year-old woman who had wandered from her residence and wandered away from family. And come to find out, the individual had been out there for some time, maybe as long as 4 hours. And so what had occurred, because of Officer Jones's what she did on duty and her actions, she prevented any further harm, any further discord, ailments, and potentially could have saved the lady's life. And so for her actions, for being vigilant on patrol, she is our Employee of the Month. Thank you.
I didn't realize you needed a copy.
There may be.
We didn't get ours. Picking on me.
We didn't get our.
This brings us to item 6 on our agenda, approval of the minutes from the December 12th, 2017 Town Council meeting and the December 2017 financial statements. Is there a motion to approve both?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The ayes have it. They are approved. This moves us to item 7, correspondence and public statements. Mr. DeMora.
Thank you, Mayor. Barry Wolf.
Mayor, Council, Happy New Year. Really have, and not to be redundant, but I have said this in prior meetings under prior administrations, that I believe that this setup is the wrong setup for council. I liked the way it was before because, especially for awards, because the awards are for the people out here and you guys too. But I just, that notwithstanding, I've spoken about clarity in the agendas, and there, to hunt to find out what item 6 means for the average layperson, which I am, I couldn't figure it out. I just, the town has the ability to hyperlink the agenda to what's being spoken about. And I'd just like to see the town, as I've said before, move forward with giving the citizens more information and the ability to hyperlink what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf.
Pat Sullivan.
Pat Sullivan, 1002 Plantation Court. And I want to ditto what Barry just said. I mean, it's really hard to read these agendas and understand what they mean. But I wanted to say something because when I was going through the agenda for tonight, I noticed item number 11, consideration of potential growth management plan. And the first thing that went through my mind was, we've got a comprehensive plan in the works, and it's going to be a while before it's completed. So I ask that you all please keep that under consideration, that whatever you come up with, if anything, that it not be, it won't conflict or be a deterrent to the work of the Comp Plan Committee. Thank you.
Sean Barnes.
How y'all doing tonight? Sean Barnes, 1418 Barber Street. Hope everybody had a great holiday and we all made it through that snow. I just came to talk a little bit about Coleman Boulevard and the effect that it's having on the neighborhoods in the back. Some we know of already because of the study that we did with Thomas and Hutton for the overflow of the water that's caused an apparent we're going to have to fix it and we're going to have to pay for it later, as well as the cars that keep coming more and more. I've lived back there for a pretty long time, grew up on Isle of Palms, but it has gotten worse, continuously getting worse while you do this on Coleman. And I believe if we go through with the medians and the parking, which I know that y'all are working on and diligently, and I appreciate everybody for that, that it's just going to ruin us back there because that's not King Street, right? I mean, we all know that, and I know you're fighting on it, but that's not King Street. That's Coleman Boulevard. That's how you got to the islands and Rifle Range Road. Well, now you use McCanson Center Street. I mean, I walk that street all the time, and I talk to people, and they're all scared. Somebody's going to die. I mean, I know that we're trying to do the best we can, and I know y'all think that maybe sometimes I might be a little bit overboard, but I'm serious. They're flying down there, and I don't expect the police officers to do that because we have other things that are going on. And so I just plead with you to try to figure out something. I mean, if the flooding was caused by the overlay, is there any way that we could take some of that funding and kind of push it towards that way somehow, right, for what we have to fix so the taxpayers don't have to pay for that? Because it wasn't of our doing. And I know it wasn't of most of y'all's doing, it was before us. But thank you so much, and you have a great night.
Kevin Cunane.
Good evening, Kevin Cunane, 3032 River Vista Way. I want to congratulate Chief Mixon and the fire department on upgrading to ISO 2, pending in the future when everything gets in line, it'll be a 2. It's a nice accomplishment for the department to have. One thing I want to kind of clarify on that, though, 20 years ago, when I was in grad school and studying this stuff, the ISO was the only thing that determined an insurance rating. If your ISO went up, everybody's rate went lower, your rates went lower. Nowadays, that's not the case. So we got to be careful how we sell that to the public. Each insurer uses their own formulas because data is much easier to come by now than it was 20 years ago. So ISO is reinventing itself to more of a code creator and somewhat like the accreditation of fire departments. It's not the be-all and end-all of insurance any longer. It is a good thing. It's good that we're going to a 2. We'd like to see it go to a 1. But really, at the end of the day, what is success for a fire department? I've spoken about it for years, and people say, Kev, what are you trying to do? Here's how I view success. 4 firefighters in a sleepy little engine in a corner of town get a 911 call in the middle of the night. The whole department or half the fire department starts heading in that direction. But that 4-staffed engine with 4 firefighters rolls into a house that had a mattress fire, puts the mattress out, and never spreads to the house, never makes the newspaper, probably wouldn't even hear about it at town council. Maybe Kevin wouldn't even know about it. But that's success. Success is not the ones you see in the paper, and it's an everyday thing. And to strive for continual improvement is really what we need to do. Can we get the fire department to the level where the response is properly staffed and quick, and those little jobs that happen, that's what you want. That's a dream in a fire department. You don't have to worry. Nobody's hurt. Nobody's property's destroyed. That's really what we should keep striving for, better improvement all the time. Thank you.
Bill Pesseter.
Good evening, everybody. Bill Pessetor, 2259 Sandy Point Lane. I'm a 30-year career fireman, so I'm going to also discuss about the ISO a little bit. I agree it's got problems, and I just want to make sure you understand it. I'm questioning how your ratings can improve when years ago this department cut down their apparatus, 2 ladders and a pumper, to beef up from landing on other ladder trucks. All right? This hasn't sat well with many of the people in this town, I'm sure, because a lot of people have discussed it. The growth is numerous in this town. New apartments, parking garages, subdivisions, numerous multiple level homes, commercial space that has since sprung up in the last couple of years. We have not changed the number of vehicles we have out on the street. That's still the same. Taking 2 ladders and a pumper out of service depleted the water delivering system capabilities by over 5,500 gallons per minute. You think that might have made a difference in Hamlin? That was a lost house. Reducing apparatus numbers, equipment resources, water delivery capabilities to increase our manning by 2 additional people is not a good trade-off. Not for my house. I'm sure if it was your house, it wouldn't be either. Ladder trucks now have a delayed arrival time, since there's only 2, okay? One at Station 3 and one at Station 5. The middle of the town does not have ladder protection. Ladder trucks responding to these incidents are not being utilized for their function efficiently. Rescue, elevated master stream, roof access, ventilation, for the simple fact that they cannot get to the front of the building because other vehicles have taken over those positions and have not left the position open for them, which they should be doing. Department relies heavily on other jurisdictions to backfill our stations. It's not a guarantee, it's a request, because we do not have automatic aid. We rely on these other jurisdictions to backfill our stations to assist in suppression activities when the town responds to a single structure fires. What does a single structure fire...
Mr. Pesseter,
yes.
Would you please conclude your remarks? Your 2 minutes.
I think you get the gist of what we're going. You need to start doing something about the fire department in this town. We're growing. I would really like to see the fire department grow with it. We've expanded to Bulls Bay and every other places. The fire department has to expand.
That's all, sir.
That's all. Yep. That concludes agenda item number 7, correspondence and public statements. This moves us to agenda item number 8, planning. We will turn the microphone over to Mr. Ulmer, we did not tell you we had this kind of weather when we brought you down here.
No, sir, you did not.
I don't know if you're packing to go back. I hope not.
I grew up in Maine with lots of snow.
Then we're
Mayor,
good. Carry
and,
on.
I'm happy to be here even with 5 inches of snow, so I'm planning on staying.
Excellent. I'll borrow your shovel next time. I
All
didn't
right.
have one.
Thank you.
Please lead us through these items.
Okay. The first 3 items, and good evening to the rest of the council too. The first 3 items are combined or related to one another and deal with an annexation, a land use plan amendment, and town zoning on a 1.8 acre parcel in Ravens Run subdivision. And the property is located here and known as a site where an airplane hangar has existed. Whether it's still there or not, I'm not sure, but this photo at least shows it there. The request is to switch this and change this to be able to allow property owners to do 1 single family home. And the Ravens Run Homeowners Association has adjusted and changed their bylaws to be able to allow that to happen. Access to the site, you can maybe see in this slide, comes from this direction and would serve this lot that would be created. Our existing land use plan reflects the open space that is there within the subdivision as it exists today. So the plan amendment would be to change that to residential. And the property, of course, as you see here, the crosshatch properties have not been annexed yet into the town. And so this would be adding that to the property. And the initial town zoning would be R1, low-density residential district, and the land use plan change would be from recreation open space to low-density neighborhood. And with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Second. We have a motion and a second. This is on item 1 alone. Is that right? Did I hear the motion correctly on the annexation? We have a motion. Was that to approve? Correct. Motion to approve and a second. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed by no? The motion passes.
First reading, ordinance number 18001, an ordinance providing for the annexation of an approximately 1.83 acre tract of land located at 1500 Clubhouse Lane in Ravens Run Phase 1 subdivision, identified by TMS number 56101000095, depicted on a plat recorded by the Charleston County ROD office and plat book BM, page 22.
Thank you. Next.
I'll make a motion for to approve first reading for amendment of the comprehensive plan from recreation open space to low density neighborhood.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Brimmer. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Santos.
I do have some discussion. One item anyhow. This is going up for R1. How many houses can actually be built on this piece of property with R1 zoning?
Well, the 1.8 acre property at R1 with 12,500 square foot minimum lot size might suggest that you could put multiple lots there. It would have to go through our subdivision process and or meet the requirements of the homeowners association. The intent is to have 1 single family home here, and our regulations, while theoretically you can do the math and divide the acreage by the square footage, you may not be able to get a couple of lots on there, but their intent is 1 single family residence on this lot.
When you say a couple of lots, you mean 3, 4?
Again, doing the theoretical 12.5 into about 3.
Okay, I mean, that's one of the issues I think I'm having with this is the fact that, you know, I know they only want to have 1, but 5 years from now, they may decide they want to move out, and next thing you know, you have multiple residences there. And also changing the comprehensive plan for this as well. You know, we have the forum going on right now. I'm not willing right now to change the comprehensive plan until our folks have finished their work on it. I think we're kind of getting ahead of it right now. So I'm going to be voting no on this for those two reasons. One, that we can't make sure that there'll only be one house built there. Down the line, there could be multiple houses built on that piece of property. And second, because of the comprehensive plan, I'm kind of waiting to find out what our folks or citizens are going to come up with, and before we start changing the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Busa.
Yeah, and the reason I recommended approval of this is in a neighborhood that's gated. Mm-hmm. It's not like that recreation or that open space can be used by anyone except those in the neighborhood, because it is one of our only gated neighborhoods. Also, we've been trying very hard to eradicate these donut holes, of which there are many in this neighborhood. So the trade-off between having 3 houses as opposed to some who vote, we voted to approve hundreds of houses, 3 houses to get rid of part of this, these donut holes, and to get it into the town for the tax base. And it's not a recreational area that's open to all the town because it's a gated community. There's no downside to this.
Thank you. Ms. Lanning.
Also, I have a very close friend who lives right across from this. She literally looks out her kitchen window at this, and she said it's a terrible eyesore. The whole neighborhood hates it. And so there's no question we want to stay very true to the comprehensive plan, and I know we've all pledged, both campaigning and those that didn't have to campaign this time, to make sure that the new comprehensive plan is a huge part of what dominates any decisions we make. But I think in this case, this is one of these unusual situations where it really benefits this neighborhood to be able to get rid of this eyesore of a hangar and have a nice home there instead.
Any others? Yes, Mr. Owens.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Is the applicant present? Is there any chance of putting a deed restriction on this property for one home site only?
My name is Julie O'Connor.
Thank you.
50 East Lake Road. I'm the designer. My clients, Doreen and Julia Ronke, are here as well. And we have been working with the HOA on this project. In fact, the Charleston County had already changed the zoning for this lot to R4, so it is a residential lot at the moment. And the HOA is highly opposed to this lot being subdivided and would not allow that to take place. They have approved the change of zoning. They want us to annex in because most of the neighborhood has annexed in.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the subdivision. I'm just curious as to whether or not they would deed restrict it to one house only, one home site only.
I don't know if that can.
Ask her.
I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know anything about that. I just know that they have bought this property to have a single-family home on it, and subdividing would be quite difficult because of access issues and all that. Certainly not anything that they are interested in doing, nor is the HOA interested in doing.
The zoning goes with the property, and as the property changes hands over years, things can happen. So that's why I'm asking the question of whether or not they can deed restrict it, and I think that would give the council, at least a few members, some reassurance.
Well, I would be happy to let Julia Ronke discuss that with you if you like.
Please state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Giulio Ronchi, 11 Crier Lane, Mount Pleasant. Our intention is to get one home only. I read the documents that precedes us, all the different owners, and they try to do several things and also subdivide and so on and so forth. But the latest iteration of this document says that there is no way to subdivide unless the HOA approved it, and they in the past basically granted access to the property through the clubhouse with the understanding that this lot could not be subdivided. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I cannot get into the details, but that's what I saw when into this project to buy the lot. Our intention is to get one house only. For many reasons, we foster kids, and therefore we want more space than Ion, and Ion is pretty tight.
Yeah, the subdivisions has large lots throughout. Real familiar with that area. My brother lives in a subdivision adjacent to it, so real familiar with that area. But what I will do is I can support this in the first reading. If you can find out and talk to your attorney about whether or not they can place deed restrictions on it and bring it back before the second reading.
Okay, we will we'll get the lawyer involved into this, so because I'm not an expert, unfortunately.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members? So we have a motion and a second to approve. I'm going to ask Mrs. Barrett to call the roll. Do this on a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Landing.
Aye.
Ms. Landing votes yes. Mr. O'Rourke.
Aye.
Mr. O'Rourke votes yes. Mr. Owens.
Aye.
Mr. Owens votes yes. Mr. Santos.
No.
Mr. Santos votes no. Ms. Whitley.
Aye.
Ms. Whitley votes yes. Mr. Brimmer.
Aye.
Mr. Brimmer votes yes. Mr. Bustos.
Aye.
Mr. Bustos votes yes. Mayor Haney.
No.
Mayor Haney votes no.
The motion passes.
First reading ordinance number 18002, an ordinance to amend the comprehensive plan 2009 through 2019, 2014 update, future land use map by changing the land use designation from recreation open space to low density neighborhood for an approximately 1.83 acre tract of land located at 1500 Clubhouse Lane in Ravens Run, Phase 1 subdivision, identified by TMS number 56101000095, and depicted on a plat recorded by the Charleston County ROD office in Plat Book BM, page 22.
That moves us to item 3. Did you fully cover that? Or
Yes, sir. I tried to cover all the items for you at one presentation.
I thought so. I just wanted to make sure. So we have item 3. What is the will of council? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we have an ordinance to zone R1 low-density residential district, the 1.83 acre land at 1500 Clubhouse Lane in Ravens Run.
So your motion is to approve. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion? Mr. Brimmer, were you raising your hand or no?
No, Mr. Bustos got a second. That's fine.
Okay, good. Any other council members? All in favor of the motion to approve, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Make that 2. The motion passes 7-2.
First reading ordinance number 18003.
6-2, I'm sorry.
Ordinance to zone R1 low-density residential district, an approximately 1.83 acre tract of land located at 1500 Clubhouse Lane in Ravens Run, Phase 1 subdivision, identified by TMS number 561000095, depicted on a plat recorded by the Charleston County ROD office in Plat Book BM, page 22.
Thank you. This moves us to item number 4, I believe.
Yes, sir.
If we're correct. Yep, item 4. If you would give us the information on that, please.
This is a request to rezone approximately 7 acres of land from CC, Community Conservation District, to R2, and it's located at 1843 Rifle Range Road. This slide shows you the location of the property on an aerial photograph. It's on the south side of Rifle Range across from Maple Hill Court, and it's adjacent to Seaside Farms to the southwest and southeast, and a county subdivision where you see the houses immediately on this border of the property here.
Okay, thank you. We do have 2 people signed up to speak to this. What is the will of council? Do we want to entertain a motion or do we want to hear?
I've got some more, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Continue. We're always good for more. Go.
Okay. The future land use designation in our plan is low-density neighborhood. It limits the development to 3 units to the acre, and the requested district is one that lines up with our comp plan, and this density of 3 to the acre would apply in this case and to any other of the residential districts that might be requested under low-density residential. Again, our existing zoning is community conservation. It allows lots of 12,500 square feet or more, and property across the way, as you see, is already zoned R1. R2 has a minimum lot size of 8,000 square feet. The applicant explained to the Planning Commission that the requested district would allow flexibility with their lot sizes. The lot size flexibility would allow them to provide the subdivision street for access, as well as work to preserve more trees and natural area on the site. The Planning Commission provided no recommendation due to a 3-3 tie, and the Planning Committee, when they reviewed it yesterday morning, also had a 2-2 vote. And of particular concern, though, from the committee yesterday was a question about the impact of the access easement that runs along that common property line for this property being rezoned to the subdivision next door. So staff went in, and this is flipped upside down, so it orients you in the way the rezoning is, and Rifle Range Road is now running on this northern edge. You see here, and we have a zoom in. Whoops, Jeff hit the wrong one. We zoom in here, and it shows the plat that's recorded for the first 3 lots going down into Page Tree Lane. And in gray, in this location, you will see that there is a private ingress-egress access across the lots, and they are not located on the yellow property, which is the property being requested for rezoning. So over the years, perhaps, residents in the subdivision maybe have been sort of creating a path or an access that might cross this Wilson property up there by Rifle Range Road, but technically their easement for access to all of those lots is on this private easement. And so there was a concern for the committee, and staff thought we would present additional information to help clarify that.
Is that it, or am I cutting you off one more time?
That's it, sir.
Okay, great. We do have 2 people signed up to speak to this. Mr. Moore, if you...
Yes, David Rowland.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Happy New Year, everybody. David Rowland, 1420 Page Tree Road, and we live on that little area that we're talking about. I just heard a discrepancy that that none of that property was on the road, and that's not correct. I can show you the pin that separates the property that they're going to develop is in the center of the road that we've been using. Okay, it's very plainly in the center. It's easy to see.
Can we see that, please? Thank you. We'll pass it for everybody to have a look.
This is looking down Rifle Range. I mean down Page Tree Road. This is Rifle Range here. Okay. Let's just see what that is. It's easily. I guess I'd like to note too that we express a willingness to work with the developers. None of us have a big issue with the zoning, with the R2 zoning. Our issue is that when these are developed, now that's the beginning of the road. At the end of the road, it's even further over. So the best way to explain it is if someone put a fence down that property line, we would not be able to get onto our property. We would not have access in at Rifle Range, and the owner at the end of the road, there's no way he would barely have walking distance to get around, okay? Now, we know and we realized it was on somebody else's property, but we've been doing this for over 40 years, okay? That's how long that the road, and as shown it as an easement, and it's never straight like that. Every one I've seen is they got a different curve in it, but most of our issue is at the very front of the road where that peg is and at the very end of the road. But we talking in the hall and are willing to go ahead with the R2 to agree to it with the contingency that they provide us a letter saying that we will have access to that road as it exists. And it seems that these folks are willing to do that.
All right.
And within 30 days.
Technically, your time is up, but if you'll stay there for a minute so we can ask a few questions. I want to ask legal and all. Is that proper for us to do a zoning that way with a condition?
Right, it is not. We cannot condition the zoning on a private matter, really on any condition, in this case, specifically a private issue between 2 parties or 3 parties.
And you're saying that the neighbors who have any concern at all, that's the concern, and this adequately addresses that concern?
Correct.
Okay. So we have another person to speak who I believe is from the developer. Is that correct?
Rhett Riedenbach.
All right. If you would address mainly, we kind of get the big picture. If you would use your time to address the agreement, I think we'll get there quicker.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Again, my name is Rhett Reidenbach. I reside at 26 Morgan Place Drive on Isle of Palms, but I'm a civil engineer, a licensed professional engineer, and work for a group called the Revere Group. We're located in North Charleston. We're representing the purchaser of this tract of land. And I'd like to confirm that what Mr. Rowland conveyed to the council this evening is in truly what the purchaser of the property is committed to do. We've already engaged with the survey group to actually locate the road. We are willing to actually create an easement that will define the actual ingress and egress into the site as it lays on this particular tract of land to preserve their means of ingress and egress in perpetuity, have that recorded at the RMC office, clear this thing up so there's no threat to the residents along Page Street that access will ever go away.
All right, thank you. Mr. Rowland, can I get you to come back up? I just have a quick question. From the residents' point of view, y'all are not concerned about going from community conservation to R2 based on what is the plus in that for the neighborhood?
Again, our biggest issue is someone putting when they sell these properties, someone other than these fine folks, and we come home from work one day and there's a fence in the middle of our road. Okay, that's our main concern. Zoning it to R2, we're fine with that as it's spelt out. I mean, that's 3 properties per acre. I had a little question, if we got into that part, that I was told one time to be 21 houses maybe on that property. I'm not sure how that math worked, but because it's a little less than 7 acres. But anyway, we don't have an issue with the R2, we really don't.
Okay.
Yeah, and if we get the document as Rhett pointed out, we're fine.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Are there any other questions anybody has? Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Bustos.
In light of what Mr. Rowland and gentlemen from the surveyors have said, I would suggest that perhaps this be deferred and come back to the planning committee. If they have that in hand, then the planning committee can come up with a good recommendation for the council. But I'd be reluctant to do that before that's in hand.
Would it be possible to approve it on first reading tonight and have that by second reading? Is the timetable okay for those who would be issuing this in a month from now? And then if we don't get it, it doesn't pass second reading?
Is that okay?
Does
that pass?
Yes, Mr. I want to defer to our legal counsel here to make sure that we can do it. If we vote one way, are we allowed to change it for the second vote?
Well, I'll say what I said. It just can't be conditioned. How you vote is up to you. That's your discretion.
Right.
But in the motion, it just cannot be a condition.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're making a condition, though, by saying if you do this on the first vote, by the second vote, we'll approve it. I just want to make sure we're clear, that's all.
Right. Ms. Whitley.
I just want to clarify, we went over this in planning, but I just want to confirm, I was trying to find it. So this rezoning from community conservation district, with that, it's 3 units per acre for community conservation, just with a larger lot size.
Correct.
And moving to R2 is still 3 units per acre,
yes,
just with a smaller lot size.
Yes.
So I guess what I want to understand a little bit more is
why?
Why? Why do they need the rezoning? How does that?
Again, the smaller lot sizes and setbacks allow them to be able to place the lots and configure the layout to be able to provide for perhaps, mathematically, or if it's 3 times 7 and say roughly 21 lots, but you got to provide a street and easements and other, stormwater retention and those kinds of things. With larger lots, you probably wouldn't achieve, say, the maximum. This would give them the opportunity to provide more, but they would be doing that, including the open space and common areas, and maybe protecting more trees for the development, rather than having them on individual lots.
So leaving it as community conservation could potentially result in fewer homes being built on that property.
Yes, we haven't seen a layout. And we talked yesterday about the whole next phase is sketch plan review and approval by the Planning Commission.
Okay. Mr. Bustos, was your remark setting up a motion to defer?
Yeah, I'd like to have it sent back to the Planning Committee so that we can see this in hand. So I would ask or make a motion to defer this back to the Planning Committee.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Not a second, but okay.
We have a second.
I have a question.
Yes.
Since this vote cannot contain conditions, I'm not entirely clear on what the committee's work will be, because if that agreement happens, it's between private parties. It's not to do with the town. So what is it we're trying to accomplish with the committee work? I'm just not clear on.
Mr. Bustos.
Well, it's up to them. I'm just asking for it to be deferred to the committee with no conditions. But if it comes back as it is with this problem identified, then I don't believe that the committee can come up with a recommendation. I'm not saying send it back to the committee and have that. I'm just saying send it back to the committee. What they do is between them.
Yeah, I guess my question is, what's the committee's work?
To review it again. In light of this new information that the lots extend into the street.
Okay, I guess just personally for me, the issue really for me is only about the lot sizes more than anything else at this point, because that's really what the town can control. So I'm not really sure that I see a need for it to go back to committee for review. We're comfortable with the lot sizes or we're not, in my view, but that's just my opinion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to defer. Any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Owens.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Rhett, can you tell me about the ingress egress that's currently there? Is it adequate width? Is it a county ingress egress?
And please come to the podium. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir, Councilman Owens. And I think, Mr. Ulmer, I think one of your earlier exhibits showed what is platted, which is a 15-foot ingress and egress, and that's in the unincorporated area of Charleston County. Mm-hmm. Obviously, after the actual road is surveyed in place, we will have to create an easement, abandon parts of what's already there, create a new easement that encroaches onto this property in question, and it will have to meet the requirements of Charleston County.
Right. Secondly, what is it right now? It's zoned for R2?
CC.
Oh, it's CC, and you're looking to move it to
go
R2.
to R2, yes, sir.
What's the benefit? Is the density the same?
Yes, sir. 3 to 1.
3 to 1.
Yeah. Again, it's and Mr. Ulmer said it very well. I mean, the smaller lots will give us an opportunity to have a variable mix of sizes of lots, preserve trees, create open space where there are trees, where we would, in other words, have to put big lots with bigger houses, and I think it allows us to have more flexibility in the design of the pond, allows us to be more thoughtful in the product that's going to be ultimately subdivided in the master plan.
Trying to preserve the green space and trees.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It gives us more flexibility to do that.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. O'Rourke.
Bob, just not that it matters, but I think what Joe's I think the point he's trying to make is the work of the committee is to come here with a recommendation. We weren't able to do that because of certain things. And one of them, don't mean to speak for other members, was the road. Some people felt very strongly that this road, that the people that live in that area need to be ensured that they have a way in and out of that subdivision. If we vote tonight on it, we're hoping that they do what everybody says they're going to do. And no disrespect, I think you probably will. But it might make the recommendation a little bit better at the next committee meeting if they come, present this, we see that, it's recorded with the RMC office, or at least a document saying that they will. Don't mean to speak for Mr. Boostis, but I think his point is, if he voted no for a good reason, but if he had all this, I think he may change his mind on that. So I think it's a matter of our committee coming out of here with a stronger recommendation. Right now, we came out with none because it was 2-2.
Okay.
Right.
Mrs.
Whitley, yes.
One thing that you recently stated was that with this larger lot size, community conservation would come with larger homes. Is there a change in the percentage lot coverage from community conservation to R2? And what's the...
I may need some assistance with lot coverage on those. The lot like sizes are larger.
Like 40% versus 50% versus 60% lot coverage. I guess what I'm trying to understand is why they can't move forward with the development with the zoning that they have currently.
So lot coverage is less as a percentage.
It's lot coverage is greater in R2. So so R2 would provide an opportunity to maximize 3 units per acre and increase the coverage, which would impact drainage for that property and for the neighboring properties by moving from community conservation to R2.
Which they would then have to address during the subdivision process, taking care of necessary drainage requirements and those kinds of things.
Mr. Owens?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm in agreement with Mr. Bustos. I think that it probably needs to go back to committee, have full details prepared, submitted. They can examine it and submit it to council for our discretion, but at least we'll have full details. So I'm in agreement.
All right. Yes, Mr. Brewer.
I have a question for the developer, if you mind coming back up.
I'm an engineer, by the way. Not that it's a bad one.
Not disparaging anybody. Just a question. If I remember correctly, these lots are pretty heavily wooded. With some
yes, sir.
Significant trees. Has there been a tree survey on this property?
Not yet, no, sir.
Any idea how many historic or significant trees are there? Is there a good many?
You know, I haven't personally walked every inch of it, Councilman. I do believe there are some significant trees, particularly in the front along Rifle Range Road, that will make a very dramatic entrance into the neighborhood that we'll be able to preserve. But I can't give you a count. I mean, frankly, we represent a local real estate investor, and when you have that kind of mentality, you kind of have to take things one step at a time. You can't really invest a lot of money into something that might be speculative. So I think in his mind, the process is, let's get it rezoned so we know we have the flexibility to have smaller lots, should that be beneficial for green space and trees and drainage and the entrance into the development, that sort of thing. Then let's invest in a tree survey. Then let's lay out the subdivision. Then let's go through planning commission and deal and work with the public on a proper project that the town can accept. So that's kind of their mentality on how they're approaching this. So we don't have all the due diligence on the site. That's why there's no conceptual site plan in front of you right now that we can say, look, guys, this is what we're trying to accomplish. There's just not that.
Yeah, the reason I ask that is I understand that. The reason I ask is because one of the justifications for changing the zoning is to work around trees.
Correct.
So I want to make sure that there is a significant number of trees to work around rather than just getting smaller lot sizes. So maybe when this goes back to committee, maybe some more information on the trees on the property could be provided for me to help me understand sort of the significance of why those smaller lots are necessary. Because there is no other R2 in this whole area. So you're asking for something that's an exception, and I'd want to have a good understanding of what you're basing that on.
Councilman Bremer, I appreciate that comment, but I would like to say the PDD for Seaside Farm actually allows for smaller lots than R2, right, which is the adjoining property to the site. So, I think it's within the character of the area, and again, it gives us more flexibility in the overall layout, and gives us a little more of a diverse product for people to ultimately buy. So that's the spirit of it. We're not trying to pull the wool over anyone. That's what we're trying to accomplish. So,
thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there's no objection, let's go ahead and do any other questions. I was going to call the question, but
Just
Go ahead. You have the floor.
One more statement. Just if they stay with community conservation, you'll still have to provide ingress to the property. You'll still have to provide drainage. It just means you won't be able to maximize the number of homes that are placed on the property to potentially maximize that. So moving it to R2 would essentially allow you to maximize the development of this within the zoning, I think is what I'm understanding. Is that a fair statement?
Mm-hmm. Certainly in R2, you'll have more of an opportunity to maximize that density, correct. But I can't tell you right now whether that can be accomplished with CC or not. I mean, the CC zoning with the 3 per acre will allow you to meet your maximum should the property physically allow it. So you could get the 21 units.
Thank you.
Don't know if you can get it right here on this property. We don't have all the information yet, but you could.
Thank you. All right. No further questions or comments. The motion is to defer. The motion has been seconded. So a vote in the affirmative would be to defer this back to the Planning Committee at its next meeting. So I will go ahead and call that question. All in favor of the motion to defer signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. The motion is deferred back to the Planning Committee of Council. And this leads us to item number A5.
Yes, sir. This is a rezoning request for approximately 12 acres of land outside the boundaries of the existing Dunes West Planned Development District, and it's known as the Covington Subdivision, which is currently under development. And the request is to add this property to the PD and designate it as you see here, Dunes West, Covington, R1. So it has that gives us the reference point, if you will, but it reflects the R1 zoning district with changes to the setbacks different from the R1, and it would not increase the total number of lots allowed under the Dunes West PD. Units that are already approved would be shifted to this property from, in effect, the entire allotment. So here's the location of the property off Bessemer Road and the layout, and you can see construction, probably even that photo is dated. And there's an adjoining tract of land that's included as well. The subdivision's entrance is, as you see here, Brightwood, and that is part of Dunes West PD, and that has a R3 designation. So you see those lots, and that was done first, and now the remainder in the rear is being under development. And then here you can see that construction is underway, and we've designated where building permits have been applied for in red, and in green dots you see where a certificate of occupancy has already been issued. So this request maintains a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet, but it would reduce the front and rear setbacks from the existing 30-foot R1 requirement down to 15 feet. The applicant has also proposed to clearly exclude accessory dwelling units from this unique zoning district within Dunes West. And that's all we have for you at this time.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yes, Ms. Whitley.
I have a question. At the Planning Committee meeting, Mr. Brimmer raised the point that there are some houses that have been approved under planned developments that will never actually be built because there's no land left to build them. So when we say this is taking away from the total number of Dunes West housing developments, is it actually taking away anything legitimate? Is it taking away from the total, or is it, or are these? I guess what I'm saying is this really taking away anything?
I think when I looked at our records, there's about 75 lots left in the Dunes West approval already, and that has been adjusted, and the staff has done some work to look at it and account for areas where an area might have been designated for 200 homes and they only built 100 in that one, so 100 were taken off the top. So I think our numbers are fairly accurate in terms of if this would be about 30 homes, then it would come from something that could be actually developed within Dunes West.
Ms. Laney?
For clarity, mentioned yesterday, I mentioned in the meeting that, as a not committee member, that I drive by this all the time, and I actually did stop in the model home one afternoon on a Sunday about a month ago, asked a lot of questions, drove down this Wagner Road, looked at it all, and that picture is pretty old. There are quite a few homes that are already well along the way, and there are some that are complete that people are living in. So for clarity, what really they're asking here is not to make a big change of any kind. It's they want to actually be included in the Dunes West subdivision category, because that will then allow them to take advantage of amenities we have, such as if they want to join the tennis and pool or whatever, different things. So it would simply be to change it so that they're part of the Dunes West. That's the important thing, that there's no additional homes that anybody's asking to build or anything of that nature. The part about the change in the setbacks has to do with being able to have more diversity in the way the homes are laid out on the property and the style, but not wildly different. So I just wanted to make the point clear. This is a beautiful subdivision that what's happened is that as people are moving in, they're asking for a lot more customization. They're going way up on the price point of what was originally intended because that's what people wanted. So I just thought I'd share those thoughts.
Mr. Bustos? Oh, Mr. Bremer, I'm sorry.
Just a clarification, this subdivision, it's part of the Dunes West PD, but it's actually going to be part of Park West, is that not correct?
No.
Yes, it's part of Park West, so it's not part of the Dunes West development. It's part of the Dunes West PD, but it's part of the Park West Amenity Association. That's correct. So just that clarification. I would just say I had a nice conversation today with the builders, trying to get some clarity on some of these issues, and I certainly understand what they're trying to do, and I don't think the request is earth-shattering. It's not going to ruin the neighborhood or anything like that, but after giving it some thought, I'm not going to support the request for this reason. There are legitimate reasons to change zoning on property, but we spent over a year hashing out zoning districts in Park West and Dunes West. A lot of thought went into it, a lot of staff work, and now we're here trying to create a new zoning classification here. For really, the reason really seems to be for builder convenience. And I'm not sure that we want to get into the business of changing zoning for convenience sake. So even though it's not a horrendous request, I think from a principle standpoint, I don't want to get into the situation of approving zoning changes based on to make it more sellable or easier for builders.
Thank you. Mr. Bustos?
This was one we struggled with in the planning committee. And here again, I'm not trying to make work for ourselves too much, but again, I think there's a little bit more to be understood about this. And Bob makes good points, as does Kathy, and I guess I misunderstood that it was coming out of Dunes West and going to Park West. So again, I think maybe this would be one better deferred back to planning committee, and they're complex things. They're not earth-shattering, but we need to make sure, especially in Park West, that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. So I would respectfully make a motion that you send this back to committee.
Motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion? What is it? Ms. Landing, you were first.
Okay. So another thing is that because why I thought this, okay, this is a little confusing because I specifically asked the question, it says Dunes West CR1. So it's already R1. They just want it to be Dunes West CR1. And my understanding from the people that are trying to get this done is that it's simply that they want it to essentially conform and be a part of the Dunes West development codes, which includes the fact that they're giving up the accessory dwellings. You cannot have accessory dwellings in Dunes West under the covenances. So I'm a little confused. Is there a way to ask one of those people now?
I would just ask, there are a lot of questions about this. The motion in the second is to defer, and I will speak in favor of that from the chair. Given a lot of issues involving this town and this council right now on planned developments, I strongly advise that we defer this for other reasons than the specifics of this, and I would urge you to please vote for the deferral. Yes, Mr. Santos.
Yeah, just a quick question. You know, ever since we've had the issue with the old village and the larger houses that are being built on the lots, and I think we passed the ordinance that said you couldn't have more than 40% coverage on your lot. And I'm not an expert in this. That's why I'm asking the question. I noticed that the setbacks are going to change 30 feet to 15 feet, which tells me that it's probably a much larger house. Do you know what that coverage is going to be percentage-wise? Is it going to be more than 40%, less than 40%? You know, because like I said, after going through all we went through with the old village, every development I'm looking at now, I'm thinking about drainage, and I'm thinking about how these larger houses are going to affect other houses that are on the street, down the street. And so, do you have any of that information? And that might be something you want to bring back to the planning committee then, and so at least can answer that question for me.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion, we have a second. Yes.
Just one quick clarification, if I could, because
Sure.
this is probably confusing to the folks in the audience as well. This is the Dunes West PD, but that PD covers the Dunes West development and the Park West development.
Right.
So all that is included here. So when it says the zoning is DW, Dunes West, that's just the zoning classification, but the subdivision is Park West. So that does get confusing up with these developments, but that's why.
Thanks. And that does clarify what the motion is on. If there's no objection, we'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor of the motion to defer signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Item A5 is deferred. This brings us to item A6, which I do believe we got correspondence today. There was a request for a deferral on this. Are we required to vote if the applicant requested on A6?
Right, it's on
we
the
are
agenda,
required
so
to
if you'd
vote.
like to defer it, you can do that, or you can vote.
I make a motion we defer, Mr. Mayor.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously.
Excuse me, sir, who was the second on that?
Mr. Owens. Item number 7 would have been to allow us to go into executive session on that item, but that is no longer necessary. So we will move past items 7 and 8, which brings us to item A9, a first reading. Mr. Olma.
This is an ordinance to annex about 2/3 of an acre of land at 448 Gurley Street. And the property is depicted here on the east side and has an existing dwelling on it.
Move for approval of annexation.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Is there anyone here to address this issue? We'll call the question. All in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is approved.
First reading ordinance number 18007, an ordinance providing for the annexation of an approximately .69 acre tract of land located at 448 Gurley Street, identified by TMS number 556000004, and depicted on a plat recorded by the Charleston County ROD office in Plat Book T96, page 168.
And now I'll make a motion for first reading of the annexation of 449 Gurley Street.
Second.
And this is agenda item number 10. We have a motion. Do we have a second to approve?
Second.
Second, Mr. Owens. We have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion is approved.
First reading ordinance number 18008, an ordinance providing for the annexation of approximately .64 acre tract of land located at 449 Gurley Street, identified by TMS number 55600000314, and depicted on the plat recorded by the Charleston County ROD office in Plat Book BB, page 67.
This brings us to item number 11, consideration of potential growth management plan. And I will preface this by saying I believe we were going to discuss this at the retreat, but it was an item of the planning committee. Mr. Bustos, do you have anything to add or enlighten us on that about?
Yes, it was the feeling of the committee that this should be something that would be put on the agenda for the council retreat.
Okay, so for the public, our council retreat is scheduled for January 31st, I do believe. We use the word retreat because nobody wants to show up for a meeting that's called the all-day, never-ending meeting. It starts at, 8:45 in the morning, I think, and goes until well into the evening, but there is free food. So if you want to address that, or if you were here tonight to address that, we hope to see you there. so we can discuss that as well as many other things for the town. This brings us to item number 12, annual report on development agreements.
Yes, sir. State law and our zoning code require the zoning administrator to prepare a report to you annually on the status of activities within development agreements. And we have 2 to report to you for 2017. These are the only 2 remaining development agreements that we have. Carolina Park is working on Faison Road. There are requirements in there for improvements to that road, signalization, etc. They are not required to provide that until further into the development, but they're actually proposing to do some of that work in conjunction with upcoming development there. Liberty Hill Farm is the other. It has requirements to address open space, additional trails, and various transportation improvements. These are all being worked on as part of sketch plan review and ultimately would be addressed during final plat review.
All right,
so that's our report.
Yes, Mr. Bustos.
Yeah, I see this for Carolina Park, Faison Road within 90 days after the issuance of certificates of occupancy. That was when the traffic improvements were going to be made?
Yes, after the 600,000th square foot is in place, and they've not developed that much commercial yet. So,
traffic at Highway 17 and Faison Road and Park Avenue and Faison Road, because of the 2 high schools, is just absolutely a mess. And I think, you know, there are a lot of young drivers there. There are a lot of old drivers around the airport. And it was my understanding when they got a permit to disturb the ground, they were going to start working on that. And we're behind now. We are behind now. And I think we need to approach the folks there in Carolina Park and get them, probably the first being Faison and Highway 17. People commit death-defying acts getting out of Charleston National trying to turn left, and they do it, and it's just, it's bad. And all the high school kids right there, and these are not experienced drivers. And I don't know what can be done, but we need to move that up as fast as we can.
And I think that was a road project that you were interested in discussing further. And Mr. Morrison has advised me that some of those improvements right at 17 would be the first ones they would do, even in advance of the trigger requirement that's in the developer agreement.
Okay. Mr. DeMore?
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. The mast arms for the light at that intersection are on order and will be installed once they arrive. Is that correct, Mr. Morrison?
That's correct. In speaking with the developer, it's my understanding they've already got under contract. It's probably their site contractor for the Costco. Same contractor would install the signal at US 17 and Faison. So I believe they're under contract with them. You should see work starting very soon.
Yeah. Okay. I certainly hope so.
Yeah. Do we know how close they are to the 600,000 square foot threshold? Is there a way we can find out?
We can, sir, absolutely.
Sure.
They're a long way.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Can we ask staff to follow up on this and get back to council so we know when those mast arms are going in and we're going to get some? Are the approvals in place? I mean, aren't there things hoops you have to jump through before you put lights up at an intersection?
Yes, sir. They've already met the warrants. They already have the permits. They were simply waiting for the land disturbance to occur. That was the trigger. The DOT would permit them to install the signal. And
awesome.
They'll let them turn it on before the development even starts.
Okay. So let's hear back on that, and that's very important. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Does that conclude item 12?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? All right, let's move on to section B, old business, please. Item number 1.
This is final reading of an ordinance to amend the Oakland Plantation Plan Development District to allow construction of a 10-foot trail within the natural roadside buffer.
Move for approval, second read.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second for approval. Is there any discussion? Anyone here to address that issue? We'll call the question. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes unanimously.
This final reading, ordinance number 17062, an ordinance providing for an amendment to the Oakland Plantation PD Plan Development District Ordinance number 04104 and subsequent amendments pertaining to an approximately 0.6 acre tract of land located adjacent to Highway 17 North across from George Browder Boulevard, identified by portions of TMS numbers 60000000074 and 60000000067, providing for the installation of a multi-use path in the natural roadside buffer.
Thank you. Item 2.
Move for approval of the annexation of the 1 acre.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Your guess is as good as mine who the second was. All right. For item 2, any discussion? Anyone here to address this issue? We'll call the question. All in favor of the motion to approve, signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously.
Final reading, ordinance number 17063, an ordinance providing for the annexation of an approximately 1 acre tract of land located on Jack Leland Drive, Stratton Place, identified by TMS number 61400000006, and depicted on a plat recorded by the Charleston County RMC Office in Plat Book J, page 100.
Thank you very much. Anything
Thank
else?
you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. This moves us to item 9, committee reports. Section A, Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee did not meet. I don't believe we have anything that needs to come before council on that. B is Bids and Purchases Committee. Mr. Owens?
Yes, Mayor. The Bids and Purchases Committee did meet, and the committee unanimously approved the following recommendations. The updates to Mount Pleasant's procurement code for council's consideration under new business. Approval to contract with Hughes Motors in the amount of $630,729.40 to purchase 2 residential garbage packer trucks and 1 spare automated arm assembly and 1 spare gripper assembly. Approve a contract with MedPro Systems LLC doing business as MPS in the amount of $139,314 to perform the upgrades to GM Darby Building ADA and interior renovations. The approval of to contract with Utility Asset Management in the amount of $190,527 to perform the Whipple Road Ditch Rehabilitation Services. The approval of a change order to the existing contract with Wolpert Incorporated in the amount of $200,991 to provide additional consulting services, including the purchase and installation of monitoring station equipment, operation and maintenance activities, sampling, project management, and a summary. And lastly, the rejection of all bids for the construction of the Whipple Road Tennis Center clay courts due to budget constraints. This concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Owens? This moves us to item C, Economic Development Committee. Mr. Brimmer?
Thank you, Mayor. We had a good meeting. At the invitation of Councilman Bustos, we had a gentleman by the name of Alan Baldock of Avison Young, and he was the former chairman of the town's Economic Development Advisory Board. He came and gave a presentation to the committee on ways that we can begin to move forward with our economic development strategy here in town. Very informative, and we appreciate him taking time out to be with us.
Thank you. I look forward to implementing some of those recommendations and working on that further. Education Committee, Mrs. Whitley.
We were glad to have Anna Dassing, the principal of Lucy Beckham High School, come out and make a presentation on the status of the high school and its build out. We also discussed a potential for the town to invest in enhancements to the Performing Arts Center at the high school in conjunction with the use agreement for the town. We are currently waiting on a full quote for the upgrades that would be done to turn it from a high school auditorium into something more professional that would be a great place for everyone in the community to enjoy.
Excellent. Sounds like a great idea. Finance Committee, there was no meeting. Fire Committee, back to Mr. Brimmer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a brief overview. Chief Williams provided an overview of the fire department to include organizational structure, services provided, daily staffing, and calls for service for 2016 and 17. We also had a discussion regarding an interagency agreement with the Awanda Fire District, and those conversations will move forward with the appropriate county staff as well.
Good.
We already have talked about the Insurance Services Office update, the ISO upgrade, earlier this evening. And sort of the big news at the end of the meeting was the announcement of Chief Williams, who announced his retirement after 32 years of service to the town of Mount Pleasant, 12 of those years as our fire chief. And he will be resigning in June of 2018. So we certainly appreciate his service, and we'll miss him here, but onward we'll go.
Good. I assume there'll be a planned send-off or some kind of celebration or something.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so we'll all have a chance to say something.
Probably have ladders over Coleman Boulevard with flags draped or something.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, we won't let them go, sir, without a chance for a good roast and
we'll all wear bow ties and loud socks.
That's right.
Okay,
That's it.
we'll do that. Yeah. All right. Item G, Human Resources. Mrs. Lanning.
Human Resources Committee met yesterday, and last week, and it was the first time since June of last year. And the item we had, the main thing for discussion was a proposed information technology regulation change where we will be updating, and we're going to deal with this in just under new business, but mainly it was covering the idea of updating things like social media, mobile devices, etc. So this is is going to be brought up to the council under new business, and that was actually all that was covered. So that concludes my report.
Thank you. So we will be taking that up under new business. Okay. H is Patriots Point Development Authority, which is me. We have a meeting coming up. I have really nothing big to report other than to express the appreciation for the town loaning them our restroom facility when the restrooms on the Yorktown froze over this week. So they wanted me to make sure I thanked everybody, council and the town administrator for that. Planning Committee, Mr. Bustos.
Okay, and I have a report, and there will be one motion. Staff provided an outline of a schedule for preparing the ordinance language for the tree protection and buffer yard regulations, which will involve the Planning Commission in January and February, review by the Planning Committee and Council in March, with the opportunity to adopt the requirements at the second reading of the ordinance, which will be in April. They also gave an update on the Workforce Housing Committee and the work of the committee to form a nonprofit corporation was described. But due to the need for specialized legal advice to prepare the necessary tax documents, the committee requested that council provide additional funding, and staff was advised that this was being discussed. The Planning Committee recommended that the issue of affordable or attainable workforce housing be discussed by the full council at a future retreat. And I'd like to either ask that that be put on the agenda, or I can make a motion if necessary. Do you want a motion? Or?
There's no motion required if you wish to put it on the agenda.
Okay, then we'll just put it on the agenda. Also, a progress report on the comprehensive plan update. Planning staff reported that the plan forum held their second meeting on December 5th, 2017. The group was briefed by the town's chief financial officer and the general manager of Mount Pleasant Waterworks. They also reviewed input received from the public and formed 4 subcommittees, and they're working on goals and objectives for different themes and topic areas. Since then, the new plan forum members have also been oriented and integrated into the subcommittees as well. The next opportunity for community input is the open house scheduled for January 30th of this year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item J, Police, Legal, and Judicial Committee, which I chair. We have the proposed ordinance, first reading of the proposed ordinance related to the registration of lobbyists. That will be taken up in council new business under item 11A3. Public Services Committee, Mr. Owens.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. We met on January 2nd. The committee approved the minutes from December 4th. Mr. Peel recognized Ms. Taisha Richardson for 15 years of service. There was one presentation given, a year-to-date review of public service operations, provided an overview of the Public Services Department activities during calendar year 2017, and a look ahead for calendar year 2018, as well as points raised during the fiscal year 2019 budget discussions.
Great.
Here is my report.
Thank you. And I know it was a busy time for public services.
Well, one thing I want to say to the public services, they just did an outstanding job recently in all of the weather-related issues that we had around the town, and we're grateful to the Public Services Department.
And you speak for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Recreation Committee, Mr. Santos.
Yes, sir. And I'd also like to give a shout out to all of our first responders, police, fire, public services, everybody. I think they all did an outstanding job. Recreation, we have 2 pages of fantastic things that our Recreation Department did over the last month, but I've just picked out 3 things since we don't have only limited amount of time. Committee reviewed conceptual plan for the Memorial Waterfront Park Phase 2 and directed staff to study the feasibility of incorporating a dog park and a water feature like a splash pad to the existing plan. The committee discussed future improvements to Carolina Park Recreation Complex and the Muggsy Kerr/Ripple Road Tennis Complex, which I am hoping that we can move ahead with as soon as possible, as we need these fields tremendously. Right, Coach? And lastly, volunteer appreciation dinner was we had with approximately 200 people in attendance, and it was held at Alhambra Hall to recognize the contributions of our Mount Pleasant Recreation Department volunteers throughout the years. You know, our volunteers are the backbone of our recreation department. If we didn't have volunteers, we wouldn't have a recreation department. These are coaches, and these are people who work with seniors and in a lot of different areas. And so I'm really proud to be involved with them, because without them, like I said, we wouldn't even have a recreation department. The Volunteer of the Year's awards were given to Adam Johnson in athletics, Bill Moss, programs for the Senior Center, and Jennifer Magwood Ray for special events. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Transportation Committee, letter M, that is me. We discussed Coleman Boulevard again and had a lengthy conversation on that, as well as executive session, and it was decided that this should be put on the agenda for, wait for it, the retreat at the end of January. So what I would ask you to do is, on all of these things, this one especially, some of these issues, it is time for us to make decisions and get moving and just settle some of these issues. So if between now and the retreat, we can be doing our background information. All of you, if you're a committee or if you're heavily involved in one of these issues, share this information with council, and let's go and let's. What I'm asking is, let's make conclusions there, like on Coleman Boulevard and other things, as best we can, and maybe ask questions and do background stuff before we get there, and I think it'll be a much more productive meeting. We also addressed issues of the adding new street signs in the old village and leaving, well, the old part of Mount Pleasant, the designated historic district, plus the old part that is not within that designated area. And the obelisk will stay no matter what happens in the future, but we just asked staff to stand down on that part of town, and we've got some more information to gather and some decisions to make there as well. Which moves us along to Waterworks and Water Supply, which is Councilman Bustos and me. And unless I'm wrong, I don't believe we have anything to report there. So that moves us to item 10, the Administrator's Report. Mr. DeMora.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Just reporting one vacancy for the Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee. That's all, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Moves us to item 11, Council Business. Under New Business is the first reading of an ordinance to repeal and replace Chapter 38 of the Procurement Code of the Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances. Who is going to give us the details?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve based on the committee report.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Is there anyone here to address this issue? I believe we're prepared to vote. All in favor of the motion to approve signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously.
First reading ordinance number 18010, an ordinance to repeal and replace Chapter 38, Procurement Code of the Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances.
Just making sure our recorder got all that. I know there were other things going on too. Item number two, adoption of a resolution to establish information technology regulations and incorporate prior resolution number 131, 10,031, whatever. Mrs. Land, do you need to address that from your committee?
No, I think it was straightforward, but
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? When you reach for your microphone, I think you're getting ready to say something. Okay.
Just keeping you active.
Anyone here to discuss this issue? We're prepared to call the question. All in favor of the motion to approve signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
Resolution 18011.
Thank you. Which brings us to item number 3, first reading of an ordinance to create Chapter 44 lobbyists. Who wants to take this? Mr. Santos.
I'll be happy to take it. Mr. Mayor, we had a good discussion about it, and I noted our legal staff has sent out the final recommendations based on all the information that was put in by our council members. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance number 18009 for the lobbyist.
We have a motion and we have a second. Yes.
This is the one that requires lobbyists to register with the town?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Anyone from the public here? Yes, please come to the microphone and address.
Kevin Cunane, 3032 River Vista Way. I attended the committee on this. I think it's a good idea. What I think we miss is trying to get lobbyists to register. They could be lobbyists from all 50 states. It could be a lobbyist from another country. We're trying to register, go attack this through them. When in reality, there's probably 9 elected officials up there and maybe a couple of paid officials of the town, employees, that really are the targets of the lobbyist. Why not put the onus on them, which is a smaller pool of people, and it's accountability to the public. The public can see, did you have contact with a lobbyist? To me, it seems easier to regulate those 10 or 12 people as opposed to trying to regulate every potential lobbyist on the planet. So, well, I think it's a good idea. I just think it's being approached backwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Mayor, just to address that, we recently passed the Code of Conduct ordinance as well that addresses a lot of those issues that relate to council members. So I think we've touched on that with our Code of Conduct ordinance. So just to put that out there, let people know that we are addressing it with ourselves. We're not expecting other people to do things. We're also looking at ourselves to make sure we do the right things as well.
Thank you. Any other council comments, questions? I believe we're ready to vote. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion to approve, signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The motion passes.
First reading ordinance number 18009, an ordinance to create Chapter 44 lobbyists.
Item number 4 is one that I asked to be put on the agenda, discussion of possible action to move the March 13, 2018 Town Council meeting to an off-site location. Would have liked for this to be in February, and then I was reminded that and make this a regular practice, and it is required to do this by action of council. What I'm not clear on is, do we have to specify exactly where, or just that we move it? Yes, Mr. Santos.
Mr. Mayor, previously we would meet at Wando's Performing Arts Building, and we had a good crowd. It's a large auditorium. As you know, we put up $600,000 for that auditorium to be built, so I think that's a perfect place for us.
Wando is certainly one of the places, or the Park West Recreation Facility is another. And I'm sorry, it is available? Do we know if Wando is available?
I don't know if Wando is available. But
we don't know if Wando is available.
We can sure check, because, like I said, we put $600,000 into it. We ought to use it a little bit, I think.
Might be good as well to go to Wando, as we consider at Lucy Beckham High School participating in upgrading an auditorium there. This might be a good chance for us to see what was done in the past. So I will entertain a motion if someone would like to make a motion that we hold our March 18th meeting at the Wando Auditorium, and if for some reason there's some reason we can't get there, let's make back up the Park West Recreation Facility. Mr. Moore, do you?
Mr. Mayor, I make that motion as you stated.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion? Mr. O'Rourke?
My thought is, I think this is a really good idea. And rather than just have the mayor bring up, let's have the March meeting off-site, maybe this is something else that we talk about at the retreat, about annually picking various locations in the town and maybe saying there's 2 or even 3, and then choose the months so that the public knows, you know, every March it's coming to my neighborhood, every July it's coming to my neighborhood, and maybe there's an official stand, at least year by year, that we look at this, because I think it's a good idea, actually, to get out and about and do that, and then advertise it and maybe get more public participation. So I'm not against it,
right.
But I'm just saying maybe it's something we discuss to do even a little bit more official. But I'm okay to vote yes for this, and we can talk about it anyway.
And maybe what we can do is, and wait for it again at the retreat, maybe we can vote on another meeting or 2 this year and go ahead and publish that and start working on the site, and we can just put that on the agenda.
Good. Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry.
Well, I just wanted to bring it up. We had talked about doing that before. It was a great idea. Our problem is a lot of the electronics that we have here and recording it. Sure. That was a little issue with us, and Wando's prepared to do that. I mean, that's a performing arts facility. So, you know, we did talk about that back then. Eric, I think you were here at the time, right? And I think that's why we settled on that one, because it was so much easier to do all the recording with all the equipment that we have to have with us.
Right. Plus the presentations that we need with all this detail. So that's a good reason to do that at the retreat, and we can work with staff to find out what facilities really work. And then, as Tom's saying, in the future, make it a regular thing, because we know those facilities really work.
Put it on the town calendar,
right,
annually.
Right.
When we had it at Wando, Mr. Santos especially enjoyed the culinary department's.
Okay. Well, he's not kidding. They had the culinary kids at the school put together a little meal for us and all, and it was fantastic. So we were able to try that and recognize them and the, you know, the things that they were doing with the culinary. Joe, you're right. In fact, that's where the no smoking ordinance was passed. The final reading of the no smoking ordinance. So we were able to do some really good things out there while we were meeting.
Well, I move then we move all of our meetings to.
No, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any comments from the public? Anyone here to address this issue? Are we ready to vote? All in favor of moving all in favor of the motion as basically as it is on the agenda, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. And we will also make note to put this discussion on the planning retreat. This moves us to Section B, Old Business. Final reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 32 of the Code of Ordinances to...
Final reading.
Hold on, Mayor, may I interject? We do, based on some other items, have, if I could recommend, 2 amendments to that. In under Section 3208, the bids and purchases, that the limit on that for goods and services to the town government, appropriate matters, should be 100,000 instead of 10,000. So that's 100,000. Anything under $100,000 would be a staff matter as opposed to council, and also to change our existing code, which for whatever reason says purchases and bids, to bids and purchases.
Okay, so those are amendments to this amendment?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, as stated by the attorney.
Okay, so a motion as amended. Is there a second?
Yeah, I've just got one.
I'll second it for discussion. Go ahead.
We have a second. Now we have a discussion.
I've got one comment. As far as bids and purchases are concerned, to maintain that stay a 3-member committee, at least an odd committee, odd number, because what we're doing in that committee, of course, is just furthering the work of council. There's no real reason for it to come back to council after it's been voted and approved.
Good point. And you have my commitment. I know the ordinance that we passed or passing allows that to be 4. It makes sense for it to be 3. So yes, it'll stay that way. Thank you. And I appreciate you bringing that to my attention, too. All right, we have a motion. We have a second on this. Mr. Paglioni, did we get the motion correct?
Yes, sir.
To fix the problem?
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? Any other comments? All in favor of the motion, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is passed.
Final reading ordinance number 17064, an ordinance to amend Chapter 32 of the Code of Ordinances to increase the makeup of certain standing committees to up to 4 members of council.
This moves us to Section C of our agenda, which is executive session. And to comply with the law, I want to be very careful in reading these, so please bear with me. The agenda allows us, if there is a motion and it is approved, to go into executive session, number 1, for legal and contractual reasons. A, litigation update on the consideration of a proposed settlement offer in Long Point Cooper versus Town of Mount Pleasant and Mount Pleasant Waterworks. B, litigation update and consideration of proposed referral to business court in the Shem Creek Development Group versus Town of Mount Pleasant. C, litigation update on Park West Development Incorporated versus the Town of Mount Pleasant. Item number 2 is personnel issues. A discussion of a personnel matter with respect to the Planning Commission. B, appointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals. C, appointments to the Old Village Historic District Commission. And D, appointment to the Historical Commission. And if we go into executive session, upon reconvening, council may take action on any item listed on an executive session agenda or discussed in an executive session during a properly noticed meeting. Is there a motion that we go into executive session?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
We did have a gentleman signed up to speak on one of the matters.
All right, we will take comments.
It was item C1A. It was John Linton.
Well, that was just if there are questions and action afterwards.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much. No other. We will proceed with the vote. All in favor of going into executive session for the issues stated and published, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. We are in executive session.
Yeah, I always
short yards. And then you have the ones that it just didn't stick. They still appreciate it, but it's not. I mean, just no longer experience that night.
Well, you gotta have a little bit to it.
Either parents.
Because the engine will stop, right?
Yeah, but I'm talking about.
What if you go on crooked, though, Sean?
I had, I went to school in France. My bachelor's in France, my degree, then I went to here and I got a bachelor's in English and French as well, English, communication. And my degree in France was what I can use that for, except for teaching. Maybe good gardening habits or something. So I can relate to that as well, but yeah, that has changed. I can look back.
You want the boat when it's older than this.
When it began with her, it was she was drafting.
Right.
So I can tell. So she graduated from with a Bachelor of Fine Arts.
Same thing with tech boxes, you just screw it right in.
Well, make sure you put some
Then she worked for 2 years as a making sure mom and pop. She was the director of operations. She did graphic design, etc. So she was really still deep in her field. And then she who's her girlfriend? Her girlfriend.
You might sound so.
Yeah. So announced to us that she was her girlfriend, and which we didn't know. So some language adjustments.
Yeah, he's on there.
And so together we
Litigation of proposed settlement
so
offer is
she
Long Point
designs
Cooper
chocolates now,
LLC
and she
for
also
Mount
works
Pleasant
at she teaches painting. But she said, no, I don't care.
Shem Creek Development Group for Town of Mount Pleasant, Mother's Ferry.
So after this, they're thinking either.
I'm assuming by the name it's
She has a European passport. She's French. So that's going to be for a Master of Arts in Fine Arts. That probably my mom, my friend is in France. She has not told us. This is a huge. Yeah, she's a ham.
Oh, that sounds like it.
She's wonderful. She's a great kid. Very, it's going to be direct. She has a great soul. She is very, she empathizes very well. She has a good grasp of what the world is about. She's in mourning, okay, Emily? Okay. So it's been really wonderful this year. And how about you? You have one child? Well, she does lots.
Oh, you're talking about China?
Well, I know. So they call skiers, actually I forgot the expression, but they call skiers a certain name. And they call the non-skiers a certain name too, like for surfers. And I don't know if they have different names and so on. It's like all the latest get up and see. She went to well embarrassing this onesie, and she said, "Mom, I look so ridiculous." And she actually went. She started the first 2 slopes, 1 and 2. She has never skied in her life before, so and that's my daughter. So she's trying. Our girlfriend does like the black diamond slopes and everything, and she's like, "Mom, I'm not gonna get down, but start and get going."
She's done it.
Yeah. So she's having a good time. Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. It's a master and a me up. I mean, when she, she told me before.
Martine, can you check my mic whenever? No rush, like a month from now?
Is your mic not working?
I don't know. You got Mr. Santos saying you got to speak into the mic. Oh, now it is. Yeah. Huh?
Wrong Martina 10.
It's called operator error.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Testing one, two. See, now that's the first time.
It's operator error. That's the problem.
Underway.
Okay.
I got your operator error.
Hope this shows up.
Wait. Just a second till everybody's back, because
Emily George?
Yes. Did we lose?
We
No.
have a majority.
She'll be back.
Went to the bathroom.
May have gone to the restroom.
She has, okay. All right. Council has reconvened from executive session. No votes were taken, no action was taken in executive session. However, in accordance with the notice and with the law, we may take action on items discussed. What is the will of the council?
I'd like to make a motion, please.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Mr. Barry Wolf to seat number 1 of the BOZA and Mr. David Rubin to seat number 7.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? There being no discussion or comments, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. We have 2 new appointees, or 2 appointees to BOZA. Any other motions? Yes.
I move to authorize our counsel in Shem Creek Development Group versus Town of Mount Pleasant to join in a motion to refer the case to business court.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Any comments from members of the public? We will proceed with the vote. All in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The motion passes. I think the door's locked. We have some other appointments to make. Would you like to go?
He's already done the zoning appeals. You're going to do the, who's doing the appointment Steel Village? Kathy.
Historical Commission?
Kathy's doing the Historic District Commission.
Yes.
I can go, either one.
Hang on. Okay, if you got it.
Sorry about that. I make a motion that we reappoint Lee Rowe and Scott Hirschhorn to the Old Village Historic District Commission, and that we appoint Ann Dover and Louisa Montgomery.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion? We will proceed with the vote. All in favor of the motion, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We have appointees to the Old Village Historic District Commission. I believe we have one other commission appointment to make, Mr.
Correct,
Ross?
Mayor. Gives me a great deal of pleasure to appoint William Ray Jr. to the Historical Commission. Put that in the form of a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any comments? Proceed with the vote. All in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We have a new appointee to the Historical Commission. That ends that section of the agenda, which moves us to item 12. If there is no further business or any unfinished business from tonight, hearing none, we stand adjourned.
Thank you. I kept hearing the noise, and I was like, what's that noise?
Great meeting.
I would have waited. I knew it was going to take 3
said, I made it through 3 meetings.
Excuse me. So it was GM and I. She said, I'm going to be really quick. I was really quick.
He was only 18 when he first ran. Kidding.
Well, you have to put it down there and then delay for about 2 seconds and then it'll open.